the voice, listen to the call, listen to the voice, listen to the call, listen to the voice, listen to the call, listen to the voice, listen to the call.
The light that he gave is incredible. I've got nothing to fear, 'cause I know his awesome power is here to keep me safe. I feel his strength and love. Counsel of mighty awesome power. Jesus Christ, the Trinity, the first and the last, beginning and the end. Praise you, Father. Praise you, deliverer. Praise you, my healer. And that is why I sing. Te-de-la, te-de-la, Here, oh Lord, it's me again. Speak to my heart, my soul is ready to receive whatever you have to say. Something on the inside, working on the outside. Oh, what a change in my life. I said, praise you, Father. Praise you, deliverer. Praise you, my healer. And that is why I sing. Te-de-da, te-de-da, just listen, just listen. Children, I'm begging you, listen to his call. Just listen, just listen. Children, I'm begging you, listen to the call. Just listen, just listen. No time to play, won't you listen to the call? Just listen. I said listen, yeah, just listen, just listen, oh, just listen to the listen. Children, I'm begging you, listen to the Father. Just listen, just listen. Children, I'm begging you, listen to the call. Just listen, just listen. Oh, yeah, oh, just listen, just listen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for attending our programming today. Today is a very special day in that I have a very good topic that most of you have been asking for, and so we have it today. And the topic is simply parenting in the diaspora and perspectives of young adults. So I have with me a couple of young adults that I'll be introducing shortly that have joined me today just to discuss the different perspectives that we have when it comes to parenting in the diaspora. Most of you know that when we come to the United States, most of us who came from Africa, we came to the United States due to the pull and push factor. And that's basically, we come from countries, that have, a lot of poverty, and, you have to really make it. You have to fight to make it. And so most of us decided to come to the United States and find something in greener pastures for ourselves. In the process, some of us came with children, others came and had children right here. But most of us were raised and were brought up in Africa. So mostly, most of our upbringing, we was in Africa. So we kind of have that exposure. And when we come to the United States, it's very hard to change. We are who we are, and we want to maintain that. And because of that, sometimes it can be a problematic in the sense that we now have children who are being raised in the United States. And for the most part, some of us, we think, okay, they're going to be just like us. We're Africans from Africa. We came here and we want to maintain our culture. We want to maintain our traditions. But as they grow, they also have to navigate the environment in which they live in. So what happens as they are navigating the environment that they live in? So much is going on, we expect them to be just like the way we think they should be like. And maybe not. Maybe they can't do that because the environment they're in is completely different. And sometimes parents are understanding, sometimes they're not. And also our expectations. Sometimes we have expectations of our children, we want them to be these. Most of us immigrants who come from Africa, we have a drive to work hard and achieve for our children. And also we want our children to achieve. And most of the times we may have, I'm not saying everybody, but we may have expectations for our children that may not just be realistic. These days we have people who are making money as YouTubers, in the music industry, different things, all kinds of things that are coming up today that most of us are not so familiar with. And because of that, we parents have a hard time adjusting to that. If a child comes home and says, hey, mom, today I'm going to be the best YouTuber there ever was. I'm going to make millions. And it will be like, what did you say? What's that? What are you talking about? And so it's a different world. And so parents have to work on adjusting. Children have to work on adjusting. And we want to bring up healthy children. We want to bring up healthy children and hope that they can do better for themselves. But what can we do to help them? Now, today, I don't have parents as per se. Last time I had parents and they told us their perspectives on how they have brought up their children. Most of them have young adult children. And they gave us perspective on how they brought up their children. And this time, we have the young people who are young adults. They've navigated the system. They're still navigating the system, but they can hold their own. They can call the shots for themselves for the most part. And because of that, I just wanted to talk to them, find out how it is, kind of having to deal with parents who are mostly maybe very cultured, maybe not, or and dealing with an American environment as well that is also demanding. So bringing all that together. So today, without wasting too much time, I want to introduce my panel. I have 6 lovely young people who have joined me today on my panel to discuss these very issues. So I will introduce my first panelist, Miss Amanda Egbo. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, how are you?
I am so happy to have you on here today, and I'm fine. I'm fine. Okay, Amanda. So Amanda is currently a phonics teacher for children 3 to 6 years old, and her interests are biking with her family and cooking. Amanda is a very, very talented young lady, and I like to pick on her. Thank God I'm her auntie, so she can't refuse. So, I just go, I just bully all of them. That's my Africanness in me, right? So, Amanda, tell us a little bit. I know you said you're a phonics teacher, and your interests are riding, biking, family, and riding. And cooking, sorry. I'm repeating that. Tell me a little bit about your trip to Korea. I know you went to Korea, and just a little bit about that. What do you think about the place and the culture?
Sure. Yeah, I was in Korea for about a year, now 2 years ago. And it was really interesting seeing the cultural differences between how my younger sister is growing up versus how my students were growing up. I was an elementary school teacher at the time.
Nice.
And it's really cool to see the differences and the similarities that are similar between the Asian culture versus the African culture, and then Asian to American, and all these different kinds of things that overlap.
Wonderful, wonderful. I can't wait to hear from you. Our next person that we'll be introducing is Miss Taylor Lake.
Hi.
Thank you, Taylor, for joining us.
Yes, of course.
Okay. So Taylor is actually a native, born, bred in America. She doesn't have any African parent per se, born in Africa. Her parents are African American from right here in America. But I thought she would bring a different flavor to everything, since she's brought up here and the rest of them are brought up, they're all brought up here, but their parents are, from Africa, and they have that background. I just thought she could bring that balance so that she can, relate and see where she relates and where she doesn't relate with the rest. So about Taylor, a little bit about Taylor. Taylor is currently working as an office assistant in a space, in her spare time. She likes singing, biking, taking walks and hiking, and crafting. Taylor has a BA in industrial organization psychology and a minor in mathematics. Welcome, Taylor.
Thank you.
Our next person that I'll be introducing will be Mr. Nchima Chongwe. Hello, Nchima.
Hi, Auntie. How are you?
I'm fine, Chima. Chima knows he can't lie because, I know about him a lot. So, Chima, be aware of that.
Of course.
Yes. So, Chima is from, currently lives in Moreno Valley, but, he's from Zambia. And he's my nephew. So, Chima was born in Zambia, but has been living in the United States for the past 20 years. And his hobbies include writing, watching movies, shopping, and being outdoors. He is currently pursuing a master's degree in education. Hey, Chima.
Hello.
Welcome. I can't wait to hear from you.
Thank you.
So our next person that I'll be introducing today is no other than Geno Cristo Ochieng. Hey, Geno. Your mic is off.
Hello, sorry about that.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm fine. Geno Cristo is a medical student at Loma Linda University. He graduated from Oakwood University with a BS in allied health. His hobbies are basketball and cycling. I can't wait to hear from him. I mean, I know I had to put Geno in. I know he just did me a favor. Again, I said, I'm pulling this anti-card. I know Geno is very busy right now. It's the end of the semester, or is it quarter? And so he must be doing a lot of exams and stuff. Thank you for joining us, Geno.
Thank you for having me.
And next is Mr. Michael Chihaba. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Mrs. Charlie.
How are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you.
I'm fine. So Michael, let me see. Let me tell you a little bit about Michael before I ask him questions, because I'm excited. Michael is coming all the way from Texas. He's joining us all the way from Texas. and I'm happy to have him. I know everybody's busy, but they just gave me this opportunity. Michael is a registered nurse and currently working in behavioral health, as well as holding the position of education coordinator. His interests include passionately studying and sharing God's word, loving his wife. He recently got married, so I know he's loving his wife. That's good. And staying an avid learner of reading books and sharing content on his channel, Build a Better Body. So welcome, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for
We
having
hope
me.
to hear more from you. Last but not the least, I said last but not the least because she's not the least. It's Miss Songwe Chiombwe. Hey, Songwe.
Hi, Auntie.
How are you?
I'm doing
Okay.
fine, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Songwe Chiombwe works in the insurance industry and is an account manager with the regional agency. However, her passion and what she believes is her purpose and mission is ministry through community building, service, and working with young people. With her heart for service, she currently works closely with organizations such as Wild Faith Co. as their media manager, and also the Africans wanted to have diversity of information. Now, to my audience, I just want you to know, I'm going to talk with the group a little bit, and after I'm done with that, I will open it up for comments from the audience. And do not worry, because all your comments are also in my chat box, so I can see the comments as they come in from YouTube, from Facebook. Just write them in, and I will be able to ask the questions to our panelists once we get to that point. Right now, I'm just going to talk to the panelists, then we'll open it up for questions, and the audience is welcome to give us more questions and ask away. So to begin with, I know all of you, have been brought up here in the United States. For the most part, I think most of you came. Let me ask this question to all of you first of all, starting with Amanda. Amanda, how old were you when you came to the United States, or were you born in the United States?
I was born in the United Kingdom and I came to the US when I was 7 years old.
You was how old?
7 years old.
7 years old. Okay. And before that, when you were in the United Kingdoms, were you born there? Or you were born there? So that's fine. You were born there. So have you had any experience like with back in Nigeria?
No, not much. I mean, as much as visiting, and I was when I was really young, so those memories are not strong.
Okay. And what about family in Nigeria? Do you have a lot of family in Nigeria that you're in touch with?
Honestly, no, I don't.
No?
I have immediate family, but that's really it.
Okay. All right. Okay. And Miss Taylor, I know you were born here, so we'll skip you on this one. Don't worry, we're coming back to you. Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself. Were you born here or grew up here? A little bit about that background.
Yeah, so I was born in Zimbabwe, and I moved here when I was 4.
When you were 4, okay. And Geno?
I was born here in Riverside, so I've been here.
Okay, so you've been here all your life. Okay. And any exposure to, before I go to Geno, Michael, any exposure to back home? Are you in touch with family back home? Do you know a lot of family members, or you just hear from your mom saying that one?
Yeah, there's a little bit of contact. Whenever they're on the phone, they'll say, "Hey, it's your uncle," or "Your uncles, come say hello." And some cousins will communicate a little bit. But it's very sparse.
And Geno, any connections back home? Any family members that you can actually pick up a phone and call and say, "Hey, what's up, Kaz?"
Yeah, I mean, not super frequently, I guess, with time being the limit now, but we've had a couple visits as a family, and we were able to establish some connections, especially with cousins. But a lot of similar experiences to what Michael was also mentioning.
Okay. Mr. Chima, Mr. Chongo, what about you?
Well, born in Zambia, I came here when I was 5, And as far as communication with family, it's increased a lot more now, only because I had gone back in 2019 and met like a lot of those cousins that I've like known on Facebook. But like being able to actually spend time with them, I think has really helped a lot. And so now there's a little bit more communication and
Okay.
connection back home now.
Okay. And Sister Chiombwe, Songwe, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I was born in Zambia and I came to Michigan when I was 3 years old. And so my whole life has been the United States. And so in terms of connection, I will say yes, that there is connection, but the levels of connection vary. And I think it takes really being intentional to even have those connections, just because being here and being there, we live in two different worlds. And so it's really easy to be disconnected.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting because you say it takes intentional, like you just have to be intentional, right? To make those connections, because truly, it's a lot of, you have to really be wanting to do that. I'm speaking as a parent and knowing that as much as I foster, sometimes I'm talking to a sibling and I push my son, I'm like, come here, my sister wants to see you. Oh, this is my sister. Oh, okay, mom, okay. And then it's like, they don't know all their cousins, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, your cousin so-and-so, this is what, okay, but you can tell that, there's no interest as much because they're not really invested into it.
Yep.
Yeah. So can you guys tell me a little bit, any one of you, can you tell me a little bit about, having no connection with, family, like let's say in Africa, I don't know about your parents. You can tell me a little bit about your own families, but with my family, I have a lot of family members in Africa. That Chima is nodding his head. And most of our kids here, it's very hard, even for my own siblings, children, my kids don't really know some of them. So tell me, how is that? How do you navigate that? Or is it okay? Or are you okay with it? Or is it something you would want to do? Or it's something you're past now? Anyone?
I can.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm just going to say that I think if it wasn't for my parents from a very young age forcing us, like you're saying, to be like, oh, this is your auntie on the phone or your grandma's on the phone, come say hi, we wouldn't know. But just because the only way we know who our family is from them telling us, because we don't have that exposure of being around them. And so I think it was them telling us that this is our family members, or let's say family members will find you on Facebook and you have the same last name. And so then you connect that way. But I think a lot of it stemmed from our parents, well, my parents, saying, hey, this is your family member, this is the relationship, and, talk to them, and even when it was weird or awkward, which it is just because we don't have that same relationship that I may have with you, Auntie Nomsa, because I see you, I hang out around you, and so I'm able to relate to you in a different way. And so though the relationship is different, I think still trying, my parents forced us to kind of still try. And so that's why even now in my adult age, I try to connect with my cousins, or I try to, speak to my grandparents. And now we have technology, things like this, where we can see them on video. And so trying to take advantage of that.
And Amanda, you were about to say something too?
Yeah, I was going to connect it to cousins. When you're growing up as a kid, you usually connect the aunties and uncles through the kids that you're hanging out with. And if you're hanging out and you don't really know your mom's brother's child, then you're just like, this is just like another older uncle in the plethora of uncles and aunties. So the disconnect is something that we replace with just like friends from church or friends from school. But maybe it's something that we would have missed more if we had witnessed it. But I think it's just like it was a part of our life. So either it wasn't there as much, so we didn't miss it as much, at least personally.
Okay. Anybody else? Chima, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think at least as far as like our family, like I know you and like the rest of the parents, like there is like that WhatsApp family group, which is always messaging. It's mostly you guys since you know each other. But then you also made us have like the siblings and cousins group, which like for us that are here, like most of the people that we're talking with are people that are back home. but then we're like watching the conversation, so we're still kind of like picking up like, oh, they have this type of personality, which I think helps. So like in my situation, when I was able to go back, it's like, oh, I know I can joke around with this person in this way, even though I don't know them like that. I've seen how like their manner, the way that they like joke, their humor, things like that.
Now tell me something, anyone. How important do you think it is for you to connect with family who are still in Africa, that maybe your parents want you to connect with, or is it even important anymore? Is it something that is important? Is it important? Does it impact you in any way? Do you feel like it has any impact on you, or it's not important? You know, like connecting with family that are still in Africa.
I think it's crucial. I don't know if anyone else what their thoughts are, or if they agree, but I think that even though we're, you know, thousands of miles apart, live in different continents, to me, it's important to know my family. It's important to know where I come from. It's important to know who my parents' siblings are, who my cousins are. Even if for whatever reason we never meet each other in person in this life, I just want to know who my family is, who I'm tied to, and the people that are connected to me. And I think also for me, it's important because I know I live in the US and I know it's really easy to lose your culture. And so I think it's important to know just who my people are. So that way, if I'm blessed with the opportunity to have kids, my kids can also know who their people are and how connected we are, and, you know, just how deep our roots run.
Anyone else on importance of connecting with family in Africa? Okay. Do you think like it impacts you in any way? Does it impact you in any way that you are not necessarily connected with your families as much as you want them, or it's all right? Chima, does it impact you in any way?
I think it does a little bit. Like Songwe was saying, I think it does a lot with like identity. It's like us here growing up. It's almost like we're losing a lot of that culture because we have more exposure to American culture. So I think if you're able to at least maintain those relationships, you're holding on to like something that's still within you, like from like back home, but you're carrying it with you and you're still having some sort of like exposure to it, even though it's not direct.
Okay. Before I go on, I just want to make sure nobody else had a comment. Okay.
I can add to that a
Okay,
little
sure.
bit.
Go ahead, Gena.
Yeah, everything that's been said, I agree with. I don't know if it's a thought that's like constantly in my mind, but there are times when I find myself wondering how I would interpret like the culture that I'm supposed to know through like a younger lens. I think Amanda made the point about like tying your closeness to an aunt or an uncle based on the kid that they have. And I feel like that would also apply for cultural and like traditional purposes. A lot of it is passed on through the lens of people who are our parents' age, and there's going to be a built-in disconnect just on that generational, aspect. So the thing that I mostly regret not having is that channel to get all of those inputs on culture from people my age. So in that sense, I do feel myself.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Yeah, just an input from us to your age, because you're not growing up in that environment. Yeah, that's powerful. That's true. Well, I'm going to shift a little bit, and I'm going to talk about expectations. You guys are young adults, and so maybe if I'm not wrong, most of you are in marriageable, age. I know Mr. Michael is, congratulations, he just got married last year, so congratulations to you. But I know everybody else here, you're of marriageable age. Now, navigating. Now, it may not be that it's any problem, but I just want to, find out from you guys. Do you find it as a problem? Do you ever get that situation where you feel like people are kind of putting too much pressure on that, or do you find that it's okay because most of the parents, again, your parents are growing up here they're here in the diaspora, and so their mindsets may be different. Maybe they're pushing more in terms of education, get this go done, or is it almost like you feel like, okay, you know what, I'm at this age and there's a little bit of pressure. Now, anyone can answer. Taylor, you can answer too. it doesn't matter. I think this is something that happens to most young people. What would you say about expectations from your parents about some of, maybe let me not just say marriage, let me just put it broadly as just expectations at the age where you guys are. Are you finding that, those expectations could be very stressful in terms of where you are and what you want to achieve, and as opposed to what your parents are thinking and they want you to do? That may not even feel like, you want to do that because of the cultural change, divide and everything.
I think
I
there
can
is
say
some
that
pressure. You can go
go
ahead. Go ahead, Amanda.
Thank you. I can say I have no pressure for my parents. My parents are very, I want to say more liberal compared to other Nigerian parents, but I don't think my parents see my path as my own path, and I haven't had any kind of marriage pressure, any kind of like career pressure or anything like that. They think they're more supportive of me as an individual rather than me as a woman in marrying years.
Okay. Songwe?
Yes, no, I was just gonna say that a lot of the pressure comes from like grandparents. Like my grandma will greet me with, "Hi, when are you getting married?" you know, and that's the greeting that you get every single time. And so I think one thing I have to remember is that where I am and where she was at my age are two different places, and we're in two different times. And so to her, it was almost maybe unusual that I'm still my age and unwed and maybe don't have kids. But to me, I'm just like, I feel like our generation isn't necessarily doing things just because they have to be done or just because they're expected of you in the same way that maybe people before us may have done. And whereas people now are really taking time to like, not saying that people before didn't take time, but I feel like a lot of people got married younger, and now people, it seems like, are getting married older and are realizing that, hey, if I do get married older, it's okay. I'm not left behind. I'm not weird. I'm not odd. I'm not different. I just took a different path. And I think we are accepting that for ourselves. And I think through us accepting it, our parents are also kind of, gauging and accepting it. Because I think, whether it's marriage or even, I don't know, work or school or things like that, though they do have certain expectations, I think for my parents, I've seen that they're, like Amanda said, supportive and maybe a little less like pressuring or hands-on, and have realized like, hey, I can say what I want, but at the end of the day, someone's going to live her life. So I'm just, I can put my input, but, someone's going to make her decisions.
Mhm. So just a quick question for the ladies. Do you find yourselves now? You see, like I said at the beginning, we have both Adventist culture and then we have the traditions, and so most of you, I mean, all of us here fall in that Adventist culture. Do you find, what are some of the problems that you find within, now just talk to me. I mean, it's just an open-ended question because I'm just trying to find out from you as well. What are some of the problems that you find being in a double bind of culture, culture as in traditions and stuff, and also Adventist culture? Do you find it, do you find it challenging, or is it something that you have navigated okay? Now that you are young adults, are you at the place where you've navigated that fine with your parents, or is it something that you're still working on, Chima?
I think as far as those expectations with those like things in the background, I think for like in my situation, it's like, oh, I'm expected to marry a Zambian, but I'm scared of every Zambian woman because I might be related to them. And then with the Adventists, like some of the ones that we've like grown up with, it's like the relationship is so close that it's like, like, is it going to be weird? So it's like there's always like two sides to it. It's like I would also like to marry a Zambian because I'm used to the food and the language, all of those things. Like they're all like benefits to me, but it's always like in the back of my mind, like I don't know. Every Zambian that I've met is somewhere there's like some sort of relation. So that's like my expectation to kind of like.
That's a dilemma, right, Chima? A dilemma because, well, here's the thing. I say to all of you on this panel, I say my nieces and my nephews, right? It may not be, it's not blood related. The only person who's blood related right now is Chima, right? But there's always that situation where, you know, you guys have grown up together, everybody, and his cousin is whatever. Does that, yeah, does that feel weird in some way? I mean, Chima is, you know, you're talking about the fact that you're scared, not scared maybe, but you think that every Zambian you meet here in the United States, probably, you know, and not in Africa, but here, is kind
Yeah,
of related to you. You are
I think even like to add on to what Chima said, when you grow up, like, oh, everyone's my cousin, everyone's my aunt or uncle, and then you get to that age where you're realizing, hey, this isn't my blood relative, but I grew up thinking that they're my cousin or they're my aunt or uncle. How do you switch, you know, in your head and be like, okay, so maybe, you know, Chima's not my cousin or whatever. Like maybe Chima finds out like I'm not related to this girl who I kind of like, but I've always called her mom auntie, and I've always called her my cousin. And you know, like it is kind of weird where it's like I've grown up and like these people have been aunts or uncles and so on and so forth, and then you have to switch and try to be like, is it, you know, weird to marry this person who I grew up thinking we had this like, you know, kind of family tie?
fam.
I think it also has to do with the location of where that kind of language is happening. I think if we grew up in Africa, we would call our classmates' parents auntie and uncle, and we would realize a lot sooner that these people aren't really our relatives. But when we're in America and we only call people at church auntie and uncle, and then when we go to school and there's other people that we may like, but we don't call them auntie and uncle, then there's a very clear separation of who's probably related and who's not. And so when you think in church of who you probably could look at, they're like, well, all of them I'm related to, versus outside of the church, outside of the African culture.
Do you think that presents a problem though?
I think it would. I mean, that's the problem that we are facing at this moment, where we're just like the only people that we know who are Nigerian or, you know, with your respective country are people that we're possibly related to. So, and that's a side effect from being, you know, first generation here. So, I mean, unless you can overcome that in your mind, then it's not a problem. But you know, people are thinking about at least.
That's right. That's right. And for the ladies on this group, I mean, how much growing up now, you are young adults. I know most of you, as well, all three of you are still at home, you know. Do you find any pressure in terms of parental restrictions of any kind, or, you know, or you're female, or, you know, church related, you know, church culture now? I'm talking about church culture and culture. Do you find yourselves restricted in any way in terms of how you relate outside? Any pressure on that?
I don't think I feel restricted. I think maybe when I was younger, I did. Like when I was younger, my parents kind of I feel like they held me a little closer, or me and my sister, where, you know, we couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't, the only people's houses who you were allowed to go to was the family and the church members and things like that. So I think in that aspect, when we were younger, we were restricted, and we were held tighter, held closer, and it was just no. But I think as we got older and we kind of broke out of our shells and we kind of challenged, you know, certain things, I think now I don't feel restricted. I think now my parents are to that place where they, again, understand like, hey, it's always going to make certain decisions. Of course, I do respect their wishes and, you know, their home and things that they may ask of me, but I don't think I feel restricted anymore now that I'm older.
Okay. So what are some of the disparities that you see, you know, growing up in an African home, you know, growing up in an Adventist home or an African home? What are some of the disparities that you see in, you know, when you compare with other people outside your environment, your culture?
How would you define a disparity?
Well, maybe let me put it this way. What are some of the impacts that you have in terms of the differences that you see between you and the, you know, other young people who are brought up here, grown up here, you know, not necessarily in the Adventist culture or not even African, and yourselves? Do you find any differences, and how do those impact you?
Well, for me, when I was graduating, I'm 27. When I was graduating from high school, or before I was graduating from high school, they said, okay, you get good grades, you should get financial aid, scholarship, help you go to school, right? But there were certain hurdles that had to be overcome that I didn't even know were there, right? And those specific hurdles had to do with immigration, right? So because I came here when I was 4, and my parents are young parents. I think my dad's 51, so I'm 27. You do the math. When they came, they didn't exactly know everything that they needed to do to make sure that everything was smooth, right? For me, whenever I get to 18, in terms of immigration. So when I'm graduating high school, I'm supposed to go to this school down in southern Texas, and I find out that, oh, you don't actually qualify for a lot of the stuff that normal people would qualify for to help them, go through school. So I started having to, I don't know, like I felt stuck for a long time and trying to figure out how am I going to raise funds, pay for school, and somehow still go to school without, flunking out because I'm working crazy hours to try to pay for all of that. So eventually God made a way, but it was a huge hurdle that needed to be overcome in order to make that happen.
Were you getting a lot of support from the parents, or did you do it on your own?
Well, my parents weren't really in a position to support me.
Okay.
Yeah. You're just like, they're trying to make it. They're trying to establish themselves. So in the midst of trying to establish themselves, they can't, do everything that they would like to do for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was
That
just gonna
makes
say
me ask
similar
another
to.
question. Oh, go ahead, Songwe.
No. I was just gonna say similar to what Michael said. Coming out of high school, my experience was very similar to his, where a lot of people are, going away to school, are getting all these grants and funding and so on and so forth. And going through high school, there's a lot of things you're blind to as a child that you can go through high school, you can go through middle school, and you don't realize certain realities or certain things that your parents are
Mm-hmm.
passing through. And it's not until life starts to shift that you realize, like, hey, wow, I'm different. My situation is different, and it's not necessarily going to be like what my friends at school are doing. And so I went, through a similar situation where I was lucky enough, my parents were helping me go to community college. And I think I myself, like Michael was saying, I felt stuck. And so through feeling stuck, I kind of felt like I didn't care. And so I, stopped caring as much, or stopped feeling like what was happening right now would even impact the future, because it felt like, what's the point? And so once I got around that, I think I was able to then go back to school and work, like you said, but you're trying to balance working and going back to school because you can't go to school unless you work. And so, yeah.
Yes, Chima.
And I think that that's one of like the biggest disparities, because you see that like how usually like immigrant children have to go through that, and then most of the people who like this doesn't ever cross their mind. A lot of these opportunities they have to go to school, sometimes they don't even take advantage of it. And so for us, like our parents want to raise us to be educated, and so we grew up with that desire, like, okay, I have to go to school, I have to make this possible so that my parents' effort doesn't go in vain. And then there's like all these hurdles, like they said, but then the people that have no hurdles don't even take advantage of those situations. And it's kind of like, wow, if I was in your position, I would do things so much more differently.
Mm-hmm. That brings me to a question of mental wellness. Knowing, I don't know, I'm sure if I ask each one of you individuals how it has been in terms of navigating the environment where you are, living, when you're at home and when you're outside the home. So have you had any difficulties in terms of mental wellness, in terms of just kind of like coping daily with, pressures? And if so, did you get good support at home in terms of understanding about anything, in terms of maybe being depressed, being anxious, being overwhelmed? Do you think that African parents in general, but also specifically your own parents, were you able to get good support emotionally? And I'm saying this not because I'm saying a parent was not a good parent, but because sometimes they may be, lack of understanding when it comes to, mental wellness and, importance. Or, again, that brings me to the point of saying, Taylor, this is also part of you, because this is a culture thing, like an Adventist culture thing. We are Christians. All of you on this screen are Christians. Do you have any problems with, pray about it? And that's where it ends, and you have to cope with the stuff. Can anyone talk to me about that?
Yes, I think that, like you're saying, we don't, we grow up thinking like, oh, just pray about it and that's it. And like maybe you're not given these resources, or you're not told about resources outside of praying. Because it's not to say that praying isn't enough, but I think praying and, these other tools such as talking to someone or getting help are very crucial. And I think that initially, like parents, like because they went through so much and they passed through so much hardship to get where they are. When you're dealing with certain things, I think sometimes the first thing is to just like you're saying, pray, and then have this perspective of like, oh, we just persevere, we just push on, and we just like have to just like swallow everything and then just keep going anyway. And I'm the type of person where I'm like, I I understand like pushing on and pressing on, but if I'm feeling something, I'm gonna let myself feel whatever I'm feeling and then move on after that, because I can't just like, because that's how you, to me, that's how you explode. And I think it's later on when I was older that I realized like, hey, of course I can just go back to school. Of course I can just keep working. Of course I can just keep going through emotions, but that's not going to serve me and who I am as a person. And so I think, after I went to Oakwood and had a crazy situation at Oakwood. And so when I left Oakwood, I was just very, very distraught. And everyone kept telling me to just like pray about it, to just keep going and to just go back to school. I've been to school before, so I understand I can go back to school. That I understand. And I know I'm capable of doing that. And I know I'm capable of praying and talking to God about it. But I was very distraught. I didn't go to church. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't it made me really emotional, just even like talking about it. And people are like, oh, just pray about it, just find another route, just this and that, just like, kind of undermining like how I felt, because like it felt like my whole world collapsed and someone's just telling me, just pray about it and just try again. And so I feel like that's not really, to me, that's not the best way to go about it. And so to me, like I said, I understood that, hey, I really needed this time to just feel what I'm feeling, just go through the motions. And after that, I know I can pick myself up and I know I can try again and I know I can move forward. But for me, I need to feel what I'm feeling in that moment.
Do you guys think that our parents, well, not our parents, the parents, we parents, do you think that we understand the issue of mental wellness very well, in terms of, like what Songwe has just told us right now? I mean, Songwe, did you feel supported though at home, or what about within the community? Was that mostly in the community where you were kind of getting, pray about it, or was it at home also? Was it like, or you were connected in terms of emotionally getting the support that you needed?
I think it was both. I think because like my parents, of course, I think they were also really kind of hurt by what happened in the
Mm-hmm.
situation, because they weren't expecting it to go that way. But I
Mm-hmm.
think through trying to like, I think the support they thought that they were needing to give was like, oh, this isn't the end, and just like try again and just start over. But that's not what I was trying to hear at the time. And so I think a lot of people were telling me, just try again, it's not the end, and just keep going. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, stop telling me to try again. Stop telling me it's not the end. Stop telling me all of these things. Not that I didn't care, but like in that moment, it felt like my whole world collapsed, because I gave up everything that I was doing to go pursue this thing. And so you telling me to try again and to start over and it's not the end, that's not what I needed at that time. And I think a lot of people were telling me that, whether it was in the community or whether it was like at home or even like certain family members, just like telling you the same thing. And so I think after a while I stopped talking about it. I stopped seeking, like certain level of comfort from people, because I didn't want to hear people telling me the same thing, because that wasn't helping me. And so I just stopped talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys think that within the African? Oh, sorry, Chima, you can go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna add to your question. I think that the parents have an understanding of mental health, but then when it involves their own children, they put on like these blinders, and it's like, oh no, it can't happen to my child. And
Right.
so, in my situation specifically, I I had to take it upon myself to go and seek the help that I needed. And then even like when I kind of like disclosed that to like my mom, uh, like I'm sure like she was probably like, confused at first, like what's going on, and maybe in denial. But like for me, it was like I felt like I needed to take that step because I wasn't getting like the issues that I was dealing with weren't being addressed in like what Sunga was saying, like, oh, like pray about it or like just keep going. Like I think sometimes you have to have a little bit more initiative and try and find help that you know is going to be not that praying isn't not that that doesn't work, but I think sometimes there are different avenues that we have to explore in order to get the type of healing that we need.
Mm-hmm. 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 Geno, any inputs on this? I picked on you. Your phone, your mic is off.
I don't have anything at the moment, particularly. Yeah, come back to me. I'm still.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, yeah. Well, we're almost getting to that one. Taylor, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna. I think I have a unique experience with just from the fact that my mom is still very Jesus centered, right? But she does her best to try to understand what I'm going through. So there's a lot of ways where we not clash aggressively, but we have different ways of approaching things. And I think when I was about 18 is when it really became clear that like we were becoming two different people. But that was also when it became clear to her. She was kind of awakened to the fact that she needs to approach me specifically differently. So since becoming an adult, I've noticed that like if we have a difference in something, she does her best to just come down to where I am and try to figure out how to support me in that. I don't know if she would support me like, not like she wouldn't support me going to a therapist or anything like that, but that's not something that's in her wheelhouse. But again, I think if she felt like I needed that, she would still support me, kind of thing.
It's kind of interesting because I'm African and I know how hard these topics are in terms of mental health wellness. Like Chima said something very important. It's mentioned that it's you can hear about that outside and you're okay. You can even give people advice about mental health and stuff. But when it happens within your home, it becomes like almost kind of like something that is like, you know what? I don't know how true this is. My own child can have this, and so something's wrong here. And in the process, maybe that can also be a problem, especially if the child doesn't. Now, it's good that you took it upon yourself, Chima, to go out there and look for help for yourself. Not that your mom wouldn't get you help, but you realize that you also needed to navigate the situation for yourself and get help, And I think that's very, very important, especially for you guys who are now young adults and, actually not necessarily having to wait on your parents to advise something. I mean, maybe advise something, but to tell you to do something. So what are the differences you see when it comes to like coming from being a teenager to now a young adult? Do you feel like your parents, is there any difference in how you relate with your parents, or, is it still kind of like this hold, like grab, hold or something?
I think there's a really clear difference between my relationship with my parents versus when I was a teenager. I think I understand them a whole lot more. And I also understand that they grew up in another time and place and country versus where I did. And even if you grew up in the same house, it's going to have an impact on how you think and how you feel about things. So I empathize with their thought process when they react to something, and I don't take it as an attack, but I take it as this is just this individual reacting in this certain way, and here's what their actual motives are. My relationship now with my parents, and I live at home, is that they're just really really wise roommates, to be honest, for me personally.
Oh,
But
wow.
I have a fantastic relationship with my parents, to be honest. And I know that if I need help mentally or emotionally, I can go to them, and I could do that. And I may have been a little bit more withheld when I was a teenager. So I think personally my relationship with my parents has only gotten better.
Mhm. Okay, as we wind down to the first hour where I'm just interviewing you guys, can you guys tell me what you feel could be most important that your parents, I mean, even us as adults in the community, the African community, church community, what are some of the things you think would be very important to pay attention to in order to support you guys in navigating this gap, bridging the gap between the adults and the young people, what would be very helpful, in helping to, bridge that gap?
One thing I can share, I don't know where I've heard it from. Maybe people have heard the phrase as well. If you have rules with no relationship, you get rebellion. And so I feel like one of the things that's very commonly stressed, and all of us have a pretty common understanding of, is like the rules are paramount. That comes, at the top. And then the relationship is also very present, but it's expressed in a very, I don't know if it's a different way or just it's in a different language, right? It's more action-based. It's less direct communication. Even the communication style is very much
kind of like authoritative parenting.
Yes, I was thinking more like demeanor. There's
Okay.
less verbal communication than I think we experience in the outside world. If you spend time watching a lot of TV, it's a very different style of communication than what happens in most of the, what I've experienced. So, not that one is innately better than the other, but if you don't have the understanding, it's a little more difficult to navigate. Like, Amanda's making a point. It's true for myself as well. As I got older, I have a better understanding of what's happening and like the difference of perspective. But that's really hard to come to at like 10 years old. So while the relationship now is understood, it could create some gaps in relationship that you can't undo. Once you build that separation, it's going to be probably for life unless it's verbally unwound and unpacked and stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't want to place blame on anybody, but I feel like that is a responsibility.
Place it on me.
It's not children's responsibility. It's
Right.
also not young adults' responsibility with their parents. I think now it becomes an opportunity that I think everybody should embrace. But I will say it's not the children's responsibility at any phase.
Wow. You say something that I picked on. You said less verbal communication. You're talking about in most, typically, I mean, I also grew up African, so typically you're talking about in most African homes, there's less verbal communication.
So that might not even be the best way to say it. And this kind of all came to me from a book I was reading last year about communication styles. And in certain cultures, when two people are speaking, it is the responsibility of the person who is speaking to make sure what is said is understood.
Okay.
In other cultures, it's the responsibility of the person who is listening to make sure what was said is understood. I'm not sure if it's accurate, but I feel like I grew up in a culture in which the person who is listening has the responsibility of understanding what was,
You're right on the money. I agree with you on that one too. I agree with you because that's an experience I think we've all grown up with. Before I come to you, Nchima, I'm just enjoying what Geno is saying here. And then rules, no regulation. Sorry, you said rules, no relationship. You said something about rules and regulate. Sorry.
If you have rules with no relationship, you will get rebellion.
Okay, if you have rules with no relationship, you get rebellion, and I think that's a very good point to make. And I think it's something that most of you here can agree to. I mean, I grew up as an, in an African home, and for most of us, at least for my generation when I was growing up, that was a very common thing where there's rules. And I mean, there is a relationship. Don't get me wrong. I know I'm not doubtful of the love that my parents had for me. I just think the way it was communicated was not very clear for me. So I was kind of left in that place where I wasn't sure until I grew up, and I'm sure it's the same for you guys. Now that you are older, like you're saying, you find yourself in a place where you understand more of the things that you didn't understand as a young person, and hopefully you guys are going to be different parents, right? than what we've been doing, huh? Yeah. So thank you, Geno. That's powerful. That's powerful. Somebody else wanted to say something.
It was just to add on to what Geno was saying. I think that, like how he was saying, like some cultures where it's like the responsibility of like the listener to fully interpret what the speaker is saying. I think that sometimes in African tradition, there can only be one speaker, and that is the parents. And so sometimes when the child is trying to, explain things from their perspective, it's like, wait, whoa, why are you speaking? Like, hold on. And so I think that's something that we also have to kind of like work on, and like that communication is something that needs to work on, because like the relationship is still there, but I think if the communication has all been one-sided, then that's where things kind of start to fall apart.
Yeah. Wow. Any other comments? Okay.
I'd like to add that. Oh, sorry, Taylor. That having a hobby or just something to do that the child likes to do. Sorry, I'm saying it so poorly. Really, for parents, it would be really great if they found an activity that their child likes to do and then they do it with them. For me personally, I was just thinking about like, why do I have such a great relationship with my parents? And for one, it's that my dad, he watched cartoons with me and like regularly, and he would buy one of my favorite shows. He introduced it to me. And so when you're sitting down and you're doing an activity that both of you enjoy, naturally things come up and you start to communicate more. But if you completely separate the field between parent and child, and there's going to be no shared space of enjoyment, then that's when the relationship can't build. So either it's like cooking with your kids or just like playing with your kids, but it doesn't have to be them just as kids. Like there has to be some sort of medium that even a 15-year-old and like a baby boomer can enjoy at the same time.
I'm curious if parents expected that medium to be church and church alone. Is that maybe what happens more often than not? I don't know. But I mean, I had some avenues also with my parents, like especially my mom. That's how I kind of got into culinary, stuff here and there. Sports, 100%. If my dad is watching, yes, this is your brainwashing that is transferred. And so that created some avenues. But another one of those things is like language. It's the most obvious part of communication for most of us. So I don't know how many people here speak the language that their parents do. There's certain phrases you reserve for, when you're trying to lighten the mood around delicate topics and stuff that we might not have access to. And I feel like that's another thing that's really lacking in places. If me and Chima had an argument and I'm trying to make sure like, I don't want us to lose our relationship, but we still have to have this difficult conversation. So I'm like, hey, my guy, listen to me, bro. It's not like a different language. There's just some certain words you would know because I have a solid understanding of the language, how to communicate. Like, now we're moving to dangerous territory. Let's be friends still. I feel like some of those things are not present when you're both operating in a third-party language like English, So I don't know. Part of the thing that I tied to like missing my cousins, I feel like they could have filled me in for those things if that was a bigger picture thing. So.
True. Sounds like communication is just a big thing, though. Something that I think most parents, as parents, we can work on. Especially with the generation growing up here, something that we can work on. I think Geno brings in a very important point when it comes to, cousins back home, where if you had that communication, you would have learned some certain things that you probably wouldn't learn, at home with your parents. And so that is something that is missing. And I don't think any of us parents could even manage to fill that in because we're not relating at the same level. So that's kind of like a very important thing, to look into. So, well, right now I would try and transition to the people that are watching on Facebook and YouTube. If you have any questions, for everyone that's on the forum today, please do ask. I'm gonna go ahead and check the comments and see if there's any comments or anything that anyone is asking. Yeah, there was a part. Okay, some of them are just like cheering you guys on. Well said, Amanda, Chima with the facts. Oh, that's Meander. Yeah. So I guess Amanda knows this person, maybe Amanda, that somebody made a comment for you right there. And then Chima, Mia K. Meander. I think that's Meander. Okay.
It is.
Yeah. So she was just saying everyone wants to be related. Somebody says it's fun when you're younger, but dating wise, it's a trap law. That's true. Yeah. Then somebody says, Meander again says, when you start dating, things get super weird. How do you just switch relationships so drastically? Okay. And then somebody says, word on the street is that dating second cousins is okay. What do you guys think? Well, in some cultures it happens. Yeah, so okay. I was just trying to see if there's any questions that have come in so far. Somebody says that it's a slow process, but they're getting there. I guess it's the parents, with this idea of, I guess, warming up. Somebody else says, in my experience, a long hug and an open ear go a long way. Someone says there's no health without mental health. That's gift. Auntie Noma, what do you say? Can the young adults enlighten us Can the young adults enlighten us on how they can meet us parents halfway in all of this? I feel like when it comes to these issues, the expectation is mostly on parents to pull the weight. What do you guys think?
It is.
It is on the parents? You saying it's on us?
Yeah.
Well, why? Tell me more. What do you say? She's asking a question. Enlighten her.
Well, okay. I think the points Amanda made are a great first step. If a child decides not to be open to relationship, that's a different type of problem. I'm not going to pretend that kids never are part of the problem. I myself have been part of the problem more than I will probably admit. But I think figuring out how to solve those things, even now us having this conversation here, it's us and the parents, right? That's an example of you doing the work to establish the relationship. It's not that
great.
If it doesn't work, it's your fault, but this is an example of doing the work.
True. So really, it starts with the parents, really. That's what we're saying right here. It starts with the parents. I mean, now you guys are young adults, so it's a different story. I mean, you're growing and now you're in your own element. But for me, bringing up, Alvin, not Malvin, he'll kill me, Alvin or Calvin, it's kind of something where, they still need my guidance. And so I have to put in a lot of work, to try and get them where they need to be at. I got you. I hear you. So Auntie Norma, that's the answer they're giving you. You have to put in a lot of work so that you can, they want you to establish it. It starts with you. Yes, Amanda.
I wanted to make a point that we are saying that we're having a better relationship with our parents at an older age because it's our first time being adults. And we see them and we're like, okay, this is what I was like as a kid because I lived it. And now this is what I'm like as an adult and I understand them. But I feel like that only happens when children become adults. But parents have been children before too. So they have the same opportunities as we do as young adults to see what it's like to be a kid and then what it's like to be an adult. However, I understand that there's a lot that this group of parents are going through where they really made a whole group of new people. They made a completely new demographic by moving to America and having kids here because it's very brand new. If we were like we were talking about talking to cousins to see, I don't understand my parents. How do you deal with this? It's because when you're living in Africa and you have generations on generations in Africa and generations on generations, you can kind of pick up stuff. But when you start a whole nother demographic of, Adventists, of Africans living in America, living in like this society, it's brand new. So I understand that it's tricky because there's nothing else to compare it to other than other cultures who do the same thing. However, it's still, it's our first time being alive when you're a kid. It's still, you have a lot of years of like understanding what it's like to be a kid and understanding what it's like to be a parent. But it really just like, honestly, I think it's for me, I don't want it to make it sound like it's easy, but I just had one of the best times with my mom because she was watching one of me and my sister's favorite shows and she laughed really hard at something really stupid that we love. And her laughing made us so happy because she was enjoying something that we like. So it's something as simple as hanging out with your daughter while she's doing her makeup, or just doing something that they enjoy and sitting down, because then they'll start to open up. And but if you're not in the space while they're enjoying themselves, then you won't know what makes them happy and what, kids don't know how to do it. So that's when we're saying parents have to meet us halfway, because you've been a kid and you've been an adult and you've been a parent, so you can empathize a little bit more.
And we can say it starts from there, really. I mean, you're right. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? And so the parents have to do what they need to do to actually bridge that gap and get things moving in the right direction. Yes, Taylor.
I'm just gonna say, for the sake of them bridging the gap, also make us feel safe too. Help us feel like we have just safety to come to them about certain things or to be a certain way with them. I know that's even something that I dealt with, where it's, even to this day, I think my mom kind of brought it up to me, where I still treat her like my mom in certain ways because I'm so used to her being the boss of me that I'm not used to coming to her with certain things. It's like, well, you're a grown up now. I have to kind of respect what you're going to do. So I'd rather you just talk to me about what's going on with you. So if I felt safer back then, maybe at this point, it'd be easier for me to be like, hey, mom, this is what I'm going on, like what's going on with me. So just that, too, just the safety aspect of all of it.
Interesting. All right, so let's go on. I don't want to miss anybody here. I think this is Auntie Afuya. She says, Chima, these young ladies at church are not your cousins. Keep your eyes wide open. Chima, you hear that? And then somebody says here, Geno was speaking facts. Okay. Here's another comment. It says, and be able to respect that change and honor it. I guess it's talking about our young adults and growth. Gift says here, in terms of background, tradition, culture, language, etc., what do you resonate more with? Your African or American background? What would you like to be identified more as? Anyone who wants to say something about that? Okay, Chima.
I think for me, even just when I go out like into the community, around my friends, around all the people that I interact with, I see myself as an African. I think I've always, like, even though I've spent pretty much my entire life here, my identity is an African. Even when I'm like filling out forms and it asks me for my like ethnicity, and it doesn't have, like, I look for Zambian even though I know it won't be there. Like, that's what I am. But it's like, okay, I guess I'll just say like Black African American. But like for me, I've always felt like deep down that I am just an African. But then what was strange to me when I had gone back to Zambia 2 years ago, I felt like people saw me as I was like I was an American. And so then it was almost this like almost like an identity crisis. It's like I think like now I think I carry myself as an American while I'm here because that's how I guess I've seen other people look and behave, even though I don't feel that way on the inside. But then when I go somewhere else, they're not gonna see the personality that I've been carrying or that I'm used to.
Well, I would like to hear from all of you. I mean, this question is very interesting. I would like to know how you guys really carry yourselves when it comes to this.
I agree
Amanda,
with
what do
Chima.
you say about that?
Which side I feel I would honestly say American, to be honest. I was born in not in Africa. I was born in another white country, and then I moved to this white country. So it's I think I've always been like connected through there. When like obviously when people ask like what am I? I'm Nigerian. I'm proud to be Nigerian and stuff. But when I go to like listen to the way I talk, when I go to Nigeria, it's like clearly American. And we have Nana Camp, Nigerian Adventists of North America. And even when I'm going to that camp, I still feel terribly Californian because I just feel like I don't really know that much culture. Now like Nigerian culture, I'm learning things while I'm there. And these are from other kids just like us who are like, have parents who immigrated to the country. So it's not that I'm ashamed of it. It's just, I just don't know. It's that I'm ignorant to it. I don't speak Yoruba. I don't speak Igbo. And it's just nothing that has come. It's nothing that I've like easily picked up and learned. It's not that I've rejected it. So yeah, personally, I feel more American, but I also feel very African. However,
Why would you want to be identified as?
Oh, I feel like identify as African.
Okay.
Yeah, but if I think a lot of people would agree otherwise, and I'd be like, yeah, sure, I understand where you come from. If you're saying I'm more American, it's just like it's with the perspective, I think.
Okay. Miss Songo, what do you say about that?
I agree with Chima, where I feel like when people ask me like, what are you? I'm Zambian through and through. Like, though I've grown up here in the US, I don't think that I identify as American. Like he said, when I'm selecting something, obviously I'm going to select Black or African American because that's the only choice we're given. And though I am Zambian, I'm Black as well. But I think when it comes to being American versus African, I don't know if there'll ever be a day where I'm like, I'm American. Like, I think that I'm Zambian, I'm proud to be Zambian. And though I have grown up here and lived in the US and that's what I know, I think, that's who I am. Zambia is who I am.
What about Geno?
Similar thoughts. Depends on who's asking at the time. If I try to claim being American, I'll be told you're African. If I try to claim being African, you're American. If I try and claim person of color, they will say something else probably. I don't know. But it all depends on who is asking in reference and where you go from there.
And Michael?
I think in school, I grew up having to explain why I didn't go to football games on Friday and different things. And honestly, I sometimes had a hard time explaining it or was embarrassed at different times. So even though I when I look back, I did have a lot of friends that helped create the culture around me, whether it was, now I'm an American, and I think they call it code switching, where you go back and forth. So my voice became very dynamic. And as a result, my culture is dynamic. But as I continue to age, we talked about that, there's another culture at play besides American and African. We have our Adventist culture. And I think at this point in my life, that's the culture that I strive for more than anything. Just to be a Christian in my heart, like for real, not just on Saturdays or whatever. But I don't know if I really care as much anymore what what people, like Gina was saying, whether they say, okay, you're a Zimbabwean or you're an American, I think I know who I am more than anything. Yeah, and I think that's what's important for me.
You've learned enough from Sinach to know who you are, huh? All right. Okay. So I will go on. Oh, sorry. You guys can't see what I'm seeing. I was going to say Elias Mupundu. Brother Elias Mupundu says here, how do you feel about being introduced to someone for the sake of dating? We want to know so that we avoid offending you. Remember, in our days, that was very common. So he says, how do you feel about being introduced to someone for the sake of dating? So if Auntie Nomsa comes, as usual, and says, hey, Chima, I got somebody for you. Yeah? What do you think about that? Connections, Chima, connections.
I don't mind it as long as it's someone that I feel like especially you and Chinomsa, if you were to bring someone like me enough to know okay, this is the type of person that I know Chima's gonna be happy with.
Like.
Yeah, but if it's I don't mind personally.
Okay, cool. You're
It's actually
good boy. I like that. I'm gonna find 5 for you.
Oh, hey, there you go.
Yeah. So what about anybody else? What do you feel about being introduced to someone for the sake of dating?
So for me, it's actually something that I sought out. I work with a man by the name of Pastor Black. He helped me start a church here in Texas. And in our relationship, I think our relationship began in 2016. And I was in a previous relationship, in and out in different ways. And at some point I was just like, you know what? I heard a message by a guy named Sebastian Braxton, and he said that before he got into his relationship, he had spiritual parents, and he dubbed one of them to be his Father Abraham. And Father Abraham chose a wife for his son, right? To some extent, or he sent someone he trusted to go fetch his son, to go find his son a wife. So that's something that I wanted for myself. Someone who had watched me, like Chima was saying, grow up and knows you enough and can kind of see aspects of you better than you can see of yourself. So I'm not going into this blind. So just some kind of guidance and what do they call it? Accountability. That's the other thing that I kind of valued in that. So that's something that I personally sought out for myself.
Cool. Cool. And you didn't regret it after that, huh?
Nope.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, let me go on here. Anyone wanted to comment? Sorry, before I go further, did anyone want to say something about that? Any Songwe or Taylor or you're good? That's fine. Not putting you on the spot. Just a comment from Chitulula says it's not easy to bend an old branch. I guess it's about the parents, And
Plasticity of mind. Sorry.
Okay. And then Wycliffe says, I understand that parenting is hard and challenging, especially to an immigrant. What are some of the things the panel can appreciate being raised by African parents in America? It's a good question. What do you guys appreciate from being raised by African parents in America?
I really appreciate the structure. I appreciate that's something that's common in African cultures that could be seen in other households too. But I know very commonly there's structure, there's respect for elders, and that's just not something that's very valued in the American culture, the respect for elders, and I really appreciate that. Those things, because when you go outside and you see friends who are just really wishy-washy and really don't really have a clear guidance of how they're going to run their dorm in their apartment or what they're going to do or schedule, when they need to do homework and when they need to do this. There was a time for this in our household. There was a time to prepare for the week. There was time to do this. And that kind of structure, you find comfort in structure, and because you know what to expect. So I think that kind of thing I really appreciate from my parents.
Okay.
I
I
agree
would
with,
say-
with the respect. Sorry.
No, go
With
ahead.
the respect aspect, it's something that I really appreciate. I think it's on a different level, both being African and I don't know if Adventist necessarily, but especially African. And on top of the respect, I think community is something that I've appreciated just in many different ways. I think that's something that I love about our parents and about our culture is how even when you may not have blood relatives near you, or even when your family may be miles away, is that community aspect and making sure that we have those people who are like aunties and uncles, who are like family, who we can be around and they can trust. And so I think that's something that I love about being Zambian and Adventist is the community.
Cool.
I can also add on to that. And thanks to Wycliffe for asking the question, because I don't want to be out here slandering, parents. I will co-sign everything that's been said. I think I made it sound like a slight that the relationship is very visual, but I take a lot of pride in that aspect. It might not be the avenue for conflict resolution, but in terms of understanding where the value is placed and who really looks out for me, I don't think I would trade that in for a different experience. There's never been a doubt in my mind, like how much they really wanted to pour into me from the time I was, before I could talk or anything like that. So everything about the community that's poured into as well, the family they try to get you to connect with, even though they're across the world, it's just more efforts that you can really see. We're trying to show you what you're worth, even if you're in these weird, different places. So it's definitely a huge benefit. I wouldn't trade it in.
Perfect. Sounds. Oh yeah, go ahead, Michael. Then we'll go to the question.
Just something simple, modeling a pursuit for excellence. I know that there are people in this country who have been born here and raised here, and many of them are in poverty. But one thing that I see that African parents do is that they excel, so they model that excellence for, the next generation. And I appreciate that.
Nice. Okay, so we go on. The next question again is from Sister Noma. She says, but what is an American culture? There is a melting pot of cultures within American or America already. I guess it's based on the fact that if you consider yourself an American, maybe. I'm suspecting that's when we had that question. So I guess she's just asking. Not necessarily, I'm not going to ask you to answer, but that's a point. She pondered that question. You can ponder on that question. Oh, okay. Geno wants to answer. All right, go ahead, Geno.
So not that this is the universal definition, but that melting pot aspect, like being able to pick and choose what parts of different cultures you want to promote and which ones you want to leave alone, I think is what I would define as American culture. It's not always done to the best, ability. Sometimes people leave behind things that they really should carry with them. One of those things like, respect for elders and valuing family and stuff like that. But from my perspective, the American culture is the freedom to pick and choose what you want to take with you and what you don't want to.
Okay. All right.
As someone who identified as American earlier, I think I could, I think it'd be easier for someone who doesn't claim it to see it clearly. Because like I said before, is when I would go to more African spaces and I feel left out, I don't really know what exactly it is. It's because there's a common thought, there's a common approach to something, and I don't know what it is. So those who know both cultures very well can know that like we do this in our household and they do that in this household. The language, there's culture in speaking, there's culture in the language, there's meaning behind how you speak to someone. And if we don't speak the language, then we don't know that part of the culture and those kinds of things. So saying a certain thing that you say, or you sing in church, that you sing in the African church, but you don't sing in the African American churches or like the other churches in other places. That's where you can really see the two cultures. And when you raise a child in both, but you don't really give, importance or an opportunity to see both of them very clearly, then they're going to gravitate to the one that's feels more natural to them. And that's probably the country that they're living in. So, yeah, that's what I would say for the American culture.
Okay. Okay, Michael, you want to say something?
Yeah, just to add on it,
Okay.
I think one dominant feature of the American culture is individualism, and African culture is more communal. You know, it's our daughter that's being married off rather than I'm getting married, you know.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, cool. I'm holding myself because I know we don't have time. I don't want to go into asking extra questions to make this longer. Okay, just a few comments. She says, how do you feel about arranged marriages? Ha 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 ha, she's laughing about it. Chima is shaking his head. Chima, you don't want to have a bride that you don't know? Cover it up and boom, here's a bride for you, Chima. I thought you said you trust your auntie. You can trust me.
Not that much.
All right. Okay. And then here she says, yes, absolutely, Michael, very important. I guess it was one of Michael's comments earlier. Now here's another question. In regards to questions of identity, do any of you struggle with imposter syndrome in your lives? And do you think your parents can play a part in helping you overcome it?
Yes.
So now, go ahead.
I don't.
Do you want to go ahead, Sungwe?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that I don't think it was necessarily imposter syndrome. I think it's just like everyone said, where when you are in the American space, you're seen as African, and then when you are trying to relate to your family or so on and so forth, you're seen as American. So I don't think it's necessarily imposter syndrome, but I think it's kind of that in between and trying to figure out like, okay, well, these people say I'm this, and these people say I'm that, and trying to find out where you fit in. So I think there was moments of that where I think my parents tried to continually drive it in that, hey, you're Zambian, you're here, but you're Zambian. And so I think that kind of helped me, to be like, hey, I am here. And sometimes I do feel lost even now today, where you kind of feel like you're in between. But I think them kind of like driving that helped. Seeing how can parents help? I know for me, that's what helped me kind of, remember and kind of feel tied to those things. But I think there's still that, like, you're here and someone's telling you this, and you call your family back home and, oh, these Americans. And so it's like, there's always that in between.
Go ahead.
I wanted to say that I don't feel an imposter syndrome in America because America is such a melting pot. So if I go into a space, like in my college, for example, my college was in LA, and there was every kind of person there. So if I'm African, it's okay because there's someone who is from Saudi Arabia and someone who's from Jamaica, someone who's, so being different means being American. But when I'm Nigerian, if you're homogenous, it's just Nigerian. I would think back to times when I was like 10, going to an uncle's house and sitting at the table and not understanding the language and just sitting there and listening to this language that I don't hear and I don't understand. And I would just have to sit through it. And then that's super imposter syndrome because it's just, I don't know what's happening around me. And this conversation is going on for an hour and I can't leave until I finish my food. So that is, I think sometimes I can feel imposter syndrome in spaces that are solely Nigerian.
Yes, Michael.
I don't think I feel that right now, but I feel like I definitely felt it when I was in high school, because I didn't know who exactly I was or shaping up into, and you're around these different people groups. So I was a Black kid in a white school that went into AP classes. So at times I would hang out with the Black kids who weren't in those classes, and sometimes I'd hang out with the white kids who were in those classes. So going back and forth between different people groups who all they seem to have everything in common amongst themselves. And I kind of have a little bit of that you know, and to try to fit in. I think it's something that most kids struggle with, you know, but to belong to a people, you know. And I think being so intercultural with Adventism and Zimbabwean and American, and then this variation of American and that variation of American, it just, I don't know, you just don't feel like you fit. So for me, I felt lonely, you know, even though I was around all these different people.
Okay, Chima, then Songwe.
And like earlier, Michael brought up code switching, which I think a lot of us have had to do. Especially like I was kind of in the same situation, to where I was black, but then sometimes I would but because of the way I spoke, like people would say like, oh, you're like whitewashed, and like the classes I was taking, like there weren't always a lot of black people in those classes. But then sometimes it's like, okay, now I'm hanging out with like the black people, so I kind of have to alter the way that I speak. And so it's not necessarily that I was being like an imposter, but it's almost like there's like all these different masks that you have to put on in order to fit into the situation that you're currently in.
And how do you feel? I mean, do you feel like your the question was the question ended with do you feel like your parents are supportive, or do your parents help you in overcoming that, or it's something you've navigated on your own?
I don't even think that they can understand it.
Yeah.
Well, that's true, because right now I had to kind of work through it, like understand the word imposter syndrome, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I understood what it kind of meant, but you know, from hearing from you guys, then I'm getting it more, you know, clearer. So I can imagine that maybe some parents don't even understand what imposter syndrome is. We've never experienced it, I guess. So
I think that I was just gonna what you're saying, Auntie Nomsa, and then something that Michael said and Chima, where it feels like we're juggling like many different hats, or sometimes we're in this space and we have to be this, or we're in this space and we have to be that, and like feeling different masks. I don't know that our parents have never felt imposter syndrome, but I think that Amanda said something earlier where like we're just like a different group of people because our parents, you know, immigrated here, and now we're living in the US with African parents, and we're you know, first generation, where we're just like a different, I don't know that they understand it from our perspective or our point of view, and so I don't know in that aspect whether or not they can understand. But one thing Michael made me think of, and I think the end of the question asked, like, how can your parents help, or how can they impact? I think being intentional about some of the spaces that you put your kids in is important, because you seeing people who look like you seeing people who are similar to you or have a certain culture that you can relate to, or because if you're, let's say I'm a Zambian black kid and I've only known white people, I've only seen white people, I don't even know what our food looks like, I don't know what it tastes like, and like all these things, then that's who I'm gonna be, that's who I'm gonna think I am, and that's, you know, the things that I relate to because that's all I've seen. And so I think for parents, like being intentional about keeping, you know, not keeping kids, not to keep them there, but like having kids around the culture, introducing it to them, you know, having them be around kids who's you know, if the parents share values and things like that. Because I think when you're young, parents are the ones who really control who you're around and what you're exposed to. And so I think in that aspect, you know, really being intentional about making sure that kids know they're black and, you know, Nigerian and Zambian and, you know, all these different things.
Interesting. A comment from Uncle Roy says, what Chima said actually applied to even us, the parents, to a certain extent, even with my heavy accent. I'm not sure what you said, Chima, earlier, but I missed this comment. I didn't see it earlier. I think there's something that you said that Uncle Roy was resonating with. Then where was I now? Here. Another question, is there any subject that shouldn't be discussed between parents and child in a Zambian household? Let's take it in an African household. You know, probably the person is Zambian, but you know, is there something that should not be discussed between a parent and a child in an African household?
I think it really is up to the parents' comfortability, because as far as I know, parenting is teaching a child how to be a person, and they've had several years of being a person, so you should tell them how to be a person. But unless if a parent is too uncomfortable speaking about a certain subject, like speaking about liking someone, speaking about how your friends maybe start doing drugs, speaking about any kind of thing. If they're uncomfortable talking about it, it's not going to come up, and they're not going to hear it from you, and they're going to hear.
What about intimacy stuff? Or, stuff to do with sexuality and all that kind of things. Would
Right.
you guys be comfortable with
I
that?
if like our parents taught us how to eat, and if like so we're always going to look to you as our teachers. And so if parents stop teaching their students, their children about a certain part, then we're just not going to learn it from you. I think honestly there shouldn't be any kind of stopping point from a parent, because they're supposed to be your guide.
Yep.
So parents should be open with any topic, not send you to your auntie or uncle or grandmother. Okay, cool. The next question here is from Wycliffe. It says, do you think it is possible that the parental challenges faced by Africans in America are also faced by American parents, especially in relationship with their children?
Definitely.
Taylor, do you see some of the struggles with your African friends as something that is common in your home as well?
I think so. Just even in relating to our parents and talking about certain things with them, or just how they present themselves to you. I think they present themselves as the authority in all cases. So you can operate with that for so long. And, even though we're in our mid-20s at this point, most of our lives we still look at our parents in this certain way. So I think, there's a lot of similarities. I think in the culture aspect, that's where it's different. Where I didn't grow up with knowing I'm from this. Well, in the mixed heritage, I know where I'm from. But in terms of being Black, I don't know what country I'm from. And I don't have a lot of culture coming into me or pouring into me in that way. So that's the only thing where I think it's really different.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah.
Okay. Let me go to the next question. Oh, go ahead.
I think it's also dependent on like just racially. I think maybe as far as like Black Americans, things are a lot more similar versus like white Americans in the way that they have their relationship with their children.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking about the respect part, and that's something that I grew up with too. Like you don't just call some adult by their first name, or you don't just approach their house in a certain way, or you don't even call their house at a certain point in time. But other kids, it's just like everything's free, and it was a whole different way of life for them.
It's very interesting because I've noticed, yes, within the African American culture, and it also depends where people are coming from. I see a lot in the South, people will go Miss so and so, Mr. so and so. They won't necessarily call any or add out by their name, Yeah. So if you do, I'll pretend like I didn't hear you. I'll just keep on walking. Just kidding. Okay. Let's see the next question here. Hey, people are bombarding you guys with questions. I'm telling you, I have so many questions here. I don't even know if we'll finish all of them. Let me see where I ended. Okay. Amanda's mom, she decided to ask a question. Or maybe she's just commenting. The African culture is also felt around the table with all the various foods we eat and share with others. Okay, she just made a comment. I missed out this one. It says here, George is asking, how did or do you navigate your parents' career choices for you versus your own? Let's talk about that.
I think I don't think there was ever a moment where I thought that my parents were going to dictate what I was in my life. I think that when I was younger, of course, people tell you like, oh, you're smart, or oh, you should do this, or oh, you should be the first doctor in the family, or you should be the first this, or like go into science because you'll never not have a job, or go into these fields. And so I think maybe there was that influence of thinking like, oh, I should do science because X, Y, Z. But I don't think I ever thought that my parents were, generally just going to dictate it. And then I think the older that I get, or the older that I got, I started to realize like, hey, I'm the one who's going to live the next 75, 80 years. And I'm the one who has to, go to work every day. And so I think what I started to hope was that whatever it is that I decided to do, whatever it is that I was passionate about, whatever it is that left me feeling fulfilled, that they would just be proud that their child is happy. And I know a lot of time people think that if you're a doctor, engineer, lawyer, whatever, those are the things that make people really proud. But I think that I don't really think I ever felt that I needed to do a certain thing. I think my dad was always like, just go to school, just go to school. And I think even with that, he kind of realized like, hey, these people are only going to go to school if they want to. So yeah.
Okay. So, well, we did that one. Oh, Chima, you wanted to say something too?
Yeah, kind of like going along with what Songo was saying. I think that at least my mom, I think she would like suggest careers, but then she wasn't really like pushing them so much on us. And I think for like me and Ziae, once we decided what we wanted to do and she saw that it was something that we enjoyed, something we were passionate about, then she was like, okay, they're happy, they're enjoying what they're doing. It's there. I'm gonna let them, pursue whatever goals that they want. But it was never like this heavy pressure of me being a doctor, because first of all, I would have decided not to do it. Like, and I don't think I could have been forced to like go into medical school. But I think for her, like she suggested, but then she also saw where we had our passions, and she was okay with us pursuing what we wanted.
Wonderful, wonderful. And question from, let me see what Uncle Ricky says here. We African parents like money. When we insist that you become a nurse, do you, I think you wanted to say thing? We're doing the too much? I think he was trying, do you think we're doing too much? Money. Go ahead. Anyone?
No, I was just gonna say I don't think it's a bad thing that African parents are wanting us to have careers that will provide financially, because I think they're looking at it from a lens of they want us to be able to live good lives. They want us to be able to survive. They want us to be able to have certain needs met. So I don't think it's necessarily just from a lens of like, oh, you have to do this and that's what's going to make you happy. I think sometimes they look at it from a lens of survival and, this is what will bring you money, or this is what will keep you to be able to afford certain things. And so I think that's a lens that it's looked at sometimes, but I think we're seeing, in our age that, hey, I can be a YouTuber and that's what can allow me to survive. And so I think that's where they come from and, where we're seeing it nowadays.
Roy says, I think we do too. People always separate us from African Americans. I felt it. I think he's talking about the idea of, being in the community and, you feel you're kind of getting into a community where, maybe a group of people who are, let's say, white, and then you kind of feel that, they actually make you feel that you're Black. You kind of know, they make it clear for you. So it's kind of like those kind of situations, which I think most of us go through, in our environments, in our workplaces and stuff. Okay, Ricky says again, do you guys see the stressors that African parents undergo, and how do you react? Hint, hint. Do you clean the whole house before they return from work? Low. Laugh out loud. Anyone?
I think this comment is a great example of a chance to communicate.
Okay.
Amen.
So you think that we keep quiet about the fact that the house is dirty and we wanted someone to clean it?
I think you say that statement halfway.
Okay.
You come home and say, why haven't you cleaned the house? You've been home all day. Very truthful. I can't argue that point. But very rarely is the emotion and the fatigue and the stress and everything else that comes from that explained fully for a child to comprehend that parents also get tired and sad and disappointed. So it's really hard for a 9-year-old kid who wants to watch SpongeBob to start thinking about how hard a 10-hour shift was. While if you explain it to them, I think that 9-year-old might be a very useful 9-year-old child to have. So, and I think it's just another thing of like lacking cultural support. If that 9-year-old kid is around a bunch of other people who get it, props to them for being able to get the social cues and figure it out faster. But to say like, oh, I can't believe like you're not getting this, I knew this when I was your age. You can still just explain it. I think people are, underestimating that power.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, true. But I think we do. I'm just thinking of myself, and I think I try to explain. I think they just, they just have to be lazy. They they want to clean after themselves.
You've done your job.
You go around the house and you pick plates under, somebody's trying to hide plates under the bed, under the cabinet, because they just didn't feel like walking downstairs to go put the plate in the sink and wash it. I don't know.
I support I support you. I understand that part now.
I was that kid.
Thank you for supporting me. Okay, let me run a little quicker because now we've run out of time, guys. So I'm gonna try and answer your questions, but we'll stop where we stop. I guess I will stop at the one that just came right now. So any more questions, I probably won't attend to them because of time. Stella says here, let me see here, a comment. She says, Odinus says, honestly speaking, this program is beneficial to both parents and children. We hope so. Thank you. And the next one is from Wam. He says, nursing homes acceptable or no? They want to know if you're going to send them to a nursing home. Is it something? Yes or no?
No.
So you guys are going to keep us at home until we die?
Because you still can teach. You can still learn. We'll have children who are growing up who need to hear what it was like when mom was a kid, So if we put the elder generation in a home, that's the end of the older generation. You're not dead if you're older, as I'm hoping I won't, just because I hit a certain age where I'm retired, and it doesn't mean I'm dead. I'm still useful. I still have a mind. I still can be viable. So why would you put a parent in a nursing home? They're still part of it.
I was all righty. Tello says, I think the moment parents begin to label certain subjects as off limits, they set harmful communication precedents. And the child begins to turn to others for advice, and you can't control that. I think she was just talking about the idea of talking no limits, talk about everything. The next one says, question for Taylor. What cultural aspects of your peers on the panel are relatable, and which ones are surprising for you?
I don't think there's anything surprising, just because I've grown up around, at least for Amanda, me and Amanda have grown up around each other since a very young age. So I've seen what her upbringing is like, and there's not a lot of differences, I don't think. The only thing, like I said earlier, is growing up knowing you are a certain culture or from a certain place, and the things that implicates. So even in food or language or how you present yourself, there's certain things that every now and then I'm I act this way because I grew up not being told to not act this way, or vice versa. So it's there's not a lot of differences, I don't think. But there are certain things where I think other people on this panel say I do this because I'm this. I don't have that experience. I don't say I like this or I do this because of this, unless it's Adventist related. But even then, that's again a similarity. So yeah.
Okay, Sister Joyce says, if parents limit what they discuss in front of their kids, someone else will teach them, and it may be against the parents' standards. So there should be no limits. Okay. Mary says, do you deal with competition or comparison to other children that may be unintentionally placed on you by your parents or other influential family members? Do you get that? You should be like John. See what John has done? You'd have done better if you had just listened.
Yeah, when you're little.
Parents, don't do that. Don't do that. No comparison. Every person is unique. Okay, Mary, again, in relation to career, academics, and the timing of your completion and other goals. Okay, I guess it was the continuation of the same thing. Right on, Songwe. Sorry, guys, it's not in real time, so we're kind of going to some of these comments and they're past. Whatever you said, Songwe, was really good. Okay, so Norma says, will we explain and you guys still don't clean? Can we spank you? All right. I say that already. Mhm. Mary says, how do you guys feel about sending money back home? Will you continue that practice?
Can
I have
say,
before.
No, go ahead, Chima.
Oh yeah, I was saying I have before. Only I don't know. Sometimes I feel like if I'm like doing like particularly well financially, like during that time, and I have some money, I'm like, oh, okay, I'll send something to like my dad or my family or something. But I think right now, like I'm not in a position to where I can be consistently sending money because I know I still have to take care of myself here and establish myself here before I can start taking care of other people. But that's my take on that so far.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree with Chima where I see the importance in it, especially for like grandparents or for people who may not have the same capacity to be afforded opportunities to be able to work and do all these different things. I see the need for it, but I think there also has to be balance in it because I think sometimes people back home can think that there's just endless money that grows on trees in the US. And so I think there's that balance that needs to be had. And really, like Chima said, Chima is, is not in the position to just be sending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars like back home and like where you can give and like knowing that you gave out of your heart and knowing that you really gave out of excess. I think it is, to me, it's important, just like Chima said, but I think also knowing that there has to be that balance and you can't just work to send money back home.
Okay. Amanda, you wanted to say something real quick?
I think it's really like if we had this blanket of here's how our parents grew up, here's how we grow up, if we had that reminder in the back of our heads, I think a lot of our conflicts would be resolved. Our family, like our parents, have people back home. But if I were to go to Nigeria, I wouldn't know where to start, to go back home. So if I'm sending money back home, it's to a name in a WhatsApp group. It's less to a face. It's less to someone I hung out with on Saturdays. It's less to this and that. When I lived in Korea for a while, and if someone was here and they're like, Amanda, can you send money back home? That Riverside is my home here. So if I'm sending money abroad, it's because I'm sending money to people that I know. If my family members need me, of course, I'll do whatever I can. But when parents send money back home, they're sending it home to a relationship. If we're sending money back home, we're sending money to someone's affiliated relationship, So just understand, like that's how we're seeing it. And it's no one's fault. It's just that's how the way we were raised. Like the parents were raised half their life here, half their life here. But the children are raised their entire life here and just, looking back through their parents' lens as much as they possibly can communicate through. So just understand that's what it's like when we say, will you send money back home? Like, give me a name of what that home looks like in the face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. That's true. I'm just going to read the last comments and I'm going to ask each one of you to answer just this one last question that I think Afuya did pose, but let me just read this comment. Chima, your mom wrote something. She says, I'm hoping that I won't end up in a nursing home. Chima, please don't send my children to a nursing home. And then Uncle Ricky says, how about the smell of dry fish, Taylor? How was that first experience? Ha, 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 ha. I guess he wants to know if you were repulsed by the fish smell or you good with it.
It's not any different than when you go to Asian markets. So.
There you go. All right. So I'm going to ask this last question, which I'm going to use to ask you guys as a closing statement for yourselves. Focus B is asking, what advice would you give your parents to improve your communication relationship with them? And also, as you say that, in closing, what would you say about this whole thing, topic, and what advice would you give to parents? We can start with Amanda going down.
Aside from what I said before, which was, find an activity that they like and find your way into that, see if you can enjoy it with them. One thing you could also do is tell your kids about what you were like when you were younger. I feel like there's a really big blur in what my parents were like when they were 20, and because no one really talks about their childhood. But there was this time my dad told me about when he was like failing classes in college. Or sorry if I was supposed to say that, but my dad was telling me about how he was human, and that made me, realize that I'm going to be okay because he's okay. And when you can really empathize with someone else, and the parent figure isn't always perfect, and you can show that like people are going to make mistakes, and this person is also human, and they know the reason why Jesus died on the cross. Jesus lived as a human, so we know Jesus knows our pain. It's great when you're speaking to someone and you know that they know what you're going through.
Yeah.
So show the parents show your kids that you have lived through this before.
Taylor? Taylor, oh, we can't hear you. Uh-oh.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Sorry. For me, I think because I'm in a really good place with my mom, it's more about just thinking about my past self and remembering when I would tell her things and she wasn't in a place to receive them. So maybe for parents, the idea of having a better communication with your kids is a really good idea, but realize that like it goes beyond the fantasy of it and be able to deal with the realities of it. So if they present you with something that maybe you're not ready for, like just keep in mind that you have to be mentally prepared for who they are as a person too, kind of thing. That makes sense.
Songwe?
I think, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I think honestly just being open, just taking down that barrier, that wall that is there sometimes, but that is always there, and just like everyone has said where it's just like, oh, I'm your parent, that's it, where like, going from just being someone who just gives you things or just provides these things or just provides you housing and all of these different necessities, but moving from just parent to relationship as well, like everyone has said, where you're taking down that that barrier, that fence, or that wall, where yes, you are still the parent, but then also being open to certain things, because I think that's crucial. And I think Taylor said something about creating a safe space, because if there's not that space, then you're not going to find yourself having certain conversations or doing certain things because that hasn't been provided for you.
Thank you. Mr. Gano?
I would echo the comments of Songwe and Taylor. Yeah, I feel like there's a great opportunity to create some strong relationships when people feel safe in circumstances of conflict. We've all been alive with our parents for as long as we've been around for, so you've had as much time as necessary to develop the happy times. Just make sure that you can get through the rough times, and I think that can create wonderful relationships going forward.
Thank you. Shima?
I think kind of like what was said like very early in the program, how like now that we too are adults, like we have a better relationship with our parents now. I think what parents can continue to do, or if it's parents that still have younger children, is listen more to what the children are saying, because I think a lot of times like children do want to communicate with their parents and don't necessarily know how to go about doing that. So I think if like what's been said, parents open up, like they provide that listening ear, and they don't approach every situation as how can I say this? Not necessarily like with an authoritative type of demeanor, but I think sometimes if you come to your children as equals on an emotional level, then that can definitely help build in those relationships.
And finally, last but not the least, Mr. Michael, what do you have for advice for parents?
I've listened to this book called Crucial Conversations on My Way to Work. So anything that I would say is in this book. So there it is right there. I think it echoes what Taylor says, but expounds on, creating that safe space and how to navigate, things that would normally be emotionally volatile, where people retreat, whether they go into silence or violence at that point, and don't really address the issue. This book has a lot of practical things that anyone would want to use, whether they're dealing with their children or their spouse or at work. It makes you more effective at communicating.
Thank you so much. There you have it, parents. You've heard everything they had to say to you. I'm very sure you enjoyed this discussion as much as I enjoyed it, and I do hope that these young people are going to come sometime again and let us know how it's going as they navigate their young adulthood. There's a lot to learn, and that cannot be learned in one sitting. There's a lot to learn. One thing I heard repeatedly is the communication styles, and having a safe environment where young people can communicate and feel, nurtured. I think those are very important aspects. And there's many more other things that could help a relationship. Remember, I know that as parents, we all go through the struggle because we are coming from Africa, coming here. We also have issues that are causing us, to have problems as we navigate our own, way through this whole situation. But let's remember our children. Let's help them grow. And let's continue to support our young adults and help them forge forward. Thank you so much for coming and for staying with us for these 2 hours and for listening to our program. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next month on negotiating and maintaining relationship series. I'm not sure yet what our next topic will be, but I will let you know as soon as I get more information on what I want to do. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you soon again. Please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you haven't yet subscribed, please press the button below and subscribe to my YouTube channel and spread the word around, because we are working relationships one at a time. Thank you.